Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a discovery that, honestly, it completely rewrites what you and I are biologically capable of achieving. For decades, we kind of thought of our genetic code as this fixed inheritance, right? Just a static blueprint passed down from our ancestors that pretty much dictated our health, our resilience, and, well, our limitations. But recent breakthroughs in molecular biology have revealed this deeply empowering truth. Your ancestors didn't just pass down a biological structure, they passed down an archive. Their absolute greatest survival abilities are actually encoded inside you right now. They aren't lost, they're just dormant, waiting for you to reactivate them.
A 2026 study published in one of the world's most prestigious scientific journals confirmed something that changes everything about how you see yourself. Your DNA carries epigenetic memory from at least 20 generations of ancestors. Their greatest survival abilities, their endurance, their resilience, their metabolic mastery, are not lost. They are switched off. And peer-reviewed science has now identified exactly what switches them back on. Take a moment and really let the sheer gravity of that sink in. You literally carried the physical memory of survival, spanning hundreds of years.
Okay, let's dive into this with part 1, the 20-generation discovery, and inheriting 500 years of memory. So the foundation of this massive paradigm shift comes from a landmark 2026 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, or PNAS, by researchers Alexandra Korolenko, Eric Nielsen, Sarah DeSantos, and Michael Skinner. And what they found was absolutely staggering. Environmental experiences don't just decay over time, they are stably transmitted across 20 generations into your exact biology. Think about that for a second. That is roughly 500 years of environmental and survival data seamlessly handed down through the centuries, directly impacting the physiological trajectories of descendants today.
Consider the ultimate contrast here. In the old paradigm, we thought of our genes as a fixed fate. Like if your family had a history of certain metabolic or inflammatory conditions, well, you were simply out of luck. But the new paradigm reveals that your genetics are actually dynamic switches. It's almost like looking at your genes as a sophisticated sound mixing board. The underlying DNA sequence remains exactly the same, but the epigenome, these chemical tags attached to the DNA, adjust the volume of specific genes, turning them way up or completely shutting them off. Your genetics aren't a permanent cage of lack. They are a dashboard of dormant potential just waiting for the right input.
Moving right along to part 2, how epigenetic memory works and the actual science of these biological switches. So you might be wondering, how exactly does an ancestor's experience cross generational lines without altering the underlying DNA sequence itself? Well, the primary mechanism here is DNA methylation. This involves the addition of a tiny molecule, a methyl group, directly to the DNA, which basically acts as a physical off switch that blocks the cellular machinery from reading that gene. Historically, scientists thought that all of these epigenetic marks were completely wiped clean and reset during reproduction. However, advanced profiling reveals that specific regions of our genome act as escape niches. These unique regions actually resist that normal biological wipe, maintaining their methylation states across generations. This is exactly how ancestral physical experiences, like starvation or extreme environmental stress, are encoded directly into the germline.
And this isn't just some theory derived from animal models. We see this vividly in human history. Studies on survivors of the 1944 Dutch famine and the 1959 Chinese famine show us that individuals exposed to severe nutritional deprivation carry distinct epigenetic changes decades later. Researchers actually measured physical methylation changes on critical genes, like IGF-2 and INSR, which dictate metabolic efficiency and lipid metabolism. Individuals exposed to famine in the womb or right around the time of conception had a permanent epigenetic remodeling that permanently altered their cholesterol, waist circumference, and insulin receptors. Their biology literally remembered the famine.
Which brings us to part 3, activating the survival code with the 5-step ancestral blueprint.
Now here is the most exciting part of this explainer. If trauma and famine can switch certain genes on or off, can we use positive, targeted stress to intentionally flip those switches back in our favor today? The answer is a resounding yes, and this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate blueprint, matching modern biohacking interventions directly to ancient survival archetypes. Let's break it down. Intermittent fasting taps into the famine resilience of our ancestors by targeting the FOXO3 gene. Cold exposure mimics the shelterless survivor, activating SIRT3. High-intensity breathwork unlocks warrior-like immune regulation through IL-10. Resistance training alters genes like MIH7 for immense physical endurance. And meditation combats generational trauma by downregulating the NF-κB inflammatory cascade.
Let's look closer at part 4, physical and mental triggers, and how we're flipping these switches today.
We're going to break down the exact biological cascades of each of these 5 interventions, so you can see the why and how behind the practical advice. Let's start with intermittent fasting and dietary restriction. When you subject your body to a prolonged absence of dietary glucose, you induce a huge decrease in circulating insulin and IGF-1. That reduction essentially removes a metabolic roadblock, allowing a crucial longevity gene called FOXO3 to enter the cell nucleus. Simultaneously, fasting activates cellular energy sensors like AMPK and sirtuins, which just supercharges FOXO3's output. The result? You activate critical antioxidant, DNA repair, and autophagy gene networks. You are literally reactivating the cellular recycling and metabolic efficiency genes that kept your famine surviving ancestors alive.
Next up is controlled cold exposure. When you expose yourself to a severe environmental thermal deficit, basically getting really cold, you activate the SIRT3 gene promoter. This triggers a biological process called the metabolic browning of white adipose tissue. This brown adipose tissue is packed with mitochondria that burn energy to generate heat without you even having to shiver, a really cool process known as non-shivering thermogenesis. This accelerates metabolic clearance and mitochondria repair. You are awakening a dormant trait from a time when your ancestors lived without modern shelter, way before heated car seats existed, right? And had to rely entirely on their internal metabolic furnace to survive the elements.
Let's move to and see how this builds with high-intensity breathwork. By engaging in cyclic hyperventilation, like the Wim Hof method, you trigger a massive adrenaline surge. Astonishingly, studies show this spikes your body's ultimate anti-inflammatory proteins by 200%, while slashing inflammation-causing molecules in half. Through this respiratory epigenetic modulation, you're using your breath to dynamically alter chromatin accessibility and consciously command an immune system response that we previously thought was entirely automatic.
So what about physical endurance? Well, resistance and hybrid training are powerful epigenetic stimuli. Intense physical activity doesn't just tear and rebuild muscle fibers. It physically remodels the DNA methylation signature of your skeletal muscle. Research shows that training induces significant hypomethylation, literally stripping away those off switches at the exact gene regions controlling muscle fibers, like MYH7 and MYL3. It also primes master transcription factors for rapid energy metabolism. You are physically altering your epigenome to unlock the endurance and muscular efficiency of your most physically taxed ancestors.
Finally, we have mindfulness and meditation. An epigenome-wide association study on experienced meditators revealed something truly incredible. A single 8-hour period of intensive meditation practice induced 61 differentially methylated sites. Just one intensive session literally alters the methylation tags on your DNA. These changes were heavily concentrated in genes regulating immune function and cellular aging. Most notably, the practice triggered a rapid downregulation of the NF-κB network, which is the master driver of chronic systemic inflammation, pathologically upregulated by psychosocial stress. By meditating, you are measurably reducing the epigenetic scars of generational trauma.
Part 5. The sum of your ancestors and a totally new paradigm of self. When you step back and look at this complete picture, it fundamentally changes the definition of who you actually are. You are not just some isolated individual dealing with a fixed set of health cards. You are part of an unbroken chain of biological memory. So the crucial point is this. The keys to the archive are in your hands right now. This isn't science fiction. It is peer-reviewed molecular biology. Cold exposure, extended fasting, high-intensity breathwork, resistance training, and mindfulness meditation. Every single one of these interventions is peer-reviewed, and every single one is immediately actionable. You can start applying this framework today, using these specific physical and mental triggers to actively strip away those methyl tags and turn the volume way up on your ancestral resilience.
Science has proven that the epigenome is a dynamic, living archive. It remembers the famines, the freezing winters, the intense physical demands, and the traumas of the last 500 years, and it is just waiting for your instruction. You are the activated or dormant sum of every ancestor who survived before you. The genes for absolute mastery over your environment are already inside you. So, the only question left is, which ancestor will you awaken today?